Hi there guys, Darren Stevenson back with another video. So the year is coming to an end very soon. Some of you around the world it's probably already over, probably in like in Australia and stuff. You're already celebrating 2020, I think, I don't know. And it's not just the end of the year, it's going to be the end of the decade. So I think to celebrate that, I think what people I've seen online now is people doing like a top 10, top 20 cards of the decade sort of thing. And I think that's something I want to do as well. So before the year comes to a close, what I'm going to do is I'm going to release a set of videos that are going to count down up until the end of 2019 to the start of 2020. So I'm going to release one video an hour that'll do a countdown from 12th to 1st, what I think are the best cards of the decade. Not just me as well. I've took a few lists from a couple of my pals that are quite close to me, some of the top highly respected players as well, to comprise a list that'll like give like a sort of score. And so I was meant to do this ages ago, so the countdown would be like once an hour. But I think I messed it up a bit because I didn't get up until an hour ago. So this will be a countdown to the UK, I guess. So I'll probably try and release a video once an hour, and there'll probably be one in between, like every half an hour, just so the countdown makes sense because I'm just a dipstick. Well, so enjoy that, guys. Have a happy new year. Cheers for watching. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe as well, and hit the bell so you get notified when each video gets released. Cheers, guys. See you later. Before we get started, just want to give a shout out to Furman and Brad, who gave their lists last minute after I made the last video. So don't worry, I haven't forgotten about you. You're just really dumb for giving me this list late. So quick shout out to them. Cheers, guys. Right, so it's important to note that these cards aren't necessarily the best cards ever out of the 12, but it's the cards that had the most impact in their respective eras of this decade. So let's just jump right into it and get to number 12. Don't worry, it's not going to be a case of where I'm only just tunnel visioned on the most recent thing, but we can't just ignore this card. Summon Sorceress is absolutely mental, and the impact that it had. A lot of Europeans might not necessarily know how influential this card was, but a lot of the Americans that had it legal for the majority of 2018 know for a fact that this card is just so dumb. Like, it made Goki just ridiculously good. Being able to play Goki with Summon Sorceress, Firewall, Goblin, Isolde, it was just so mental. Even if you stopped Isolde, you would have the push with Summon Sorceress, and Summon Sorceress is just limitless to what it can do. It can summon pretty much anything from the deck as long as it's pointing to the right thing, and even points at your opponent's boards as well. So there's some really obscure plays that you can do where you can give your opponent a monster. This card was basically the beginning of what we found to be a mental combo-orientated format, where we had to get rid of cards or many Link monsters, including itself. This card eventually got banned from organized play as well, just because it was so mental. It can do a lot. The amount of combos that this card was a part of is absolutely just ridiculous. And it's a shame it's not higher, but there's a lot of other cards that were just simply more impactful than it. But it's earned a spot here as 12th place. Now, don't miss out on the next ones. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell so you can find out for the next 11 or higher on the list. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Number 11. See, I told you it wasn't just going to be Link monsters. I bet you all thought I was going to pick the top 12 Link monsters or something like that. But no, don't worry. Other cards get their respect too. And this card in particular is mental. Zodiac Broadbull. My god. Who would have thought something that searched a Beast Warrior was just so mental? Like, Zodiac was one of the best cards that have ever been printed. Like without a shadow of doubt, probably one of the best engines that have ever been made. Being able to just summon any zoo monster, and you just put a Broad Ball on top of search a monster, and then just excess going to plenty of players on top of that as well. But the reason why Broad Ball shines outside of all the other Zodiac monsters is because of the recursion that it allows. In the zoo engine, it just lets you search a zoo, so it gives you a follow-up play. And then when you go down the route of the combo decks as well, if you manage to make 2 level 4 monsters, you can make a Broad Bull, put another zoo on top, then make another Broad Bull. So you can search 2 Beast Warriors in the same turn. And that was particularly mental because decks like you saw the Pendulum Zoo Metal 4 deck that like just searched a Beast Warrior low scale and high scale, which is just mental. It also contributed to a lot of degenerate stuff like getting Loonlight Black Sheep to search Fusion Substitute. and then being able to make a bunch of degenerate stuff like that as well. So this card's just mental. You might not think that a rank 4 card that searches the Beast Warrior is particularly mental, but it was just the versatility and the utility that it applied, that it gave for that format was just so good. Generic rank 4, you can summon it twice. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And yep, that's it. Zodiac Broad Bull is 11th in my top 12 cards of the decade. But let me know what you guys think. Be sure to tune in for the next ones. See you guys later. Number 10. Yes, that's right! Pendulum! Oh yes, one of my favorite cards of all time. Astrograph Sorcerer in number 10. Oh man, I wish this card was higher. Oh, it's one of my favorite cards ever, man. Why is it not higher? Well, it's just one of the most mental pendulum monsters, if not the best pendulum monster that's ever been printed. The card combos really well with Electromite, so you can pop cards, add it, it can search it. It searches it, puts it in the extra deck, you pop a scale, add it, summon it, add the card you just popped or something else. They can add anything as once. Oh god, the constant recursion that Astrograph gave was just mental, man. And it was conveniently at level 7, so you can overlay it with another Astrograph that you've just popped off with, because it's not once per turn, and then overlay it into Absolute to make Vortex. Oh man, it was one of the best decks ever, man. Oh, and you know it was. That's it, Astrograph, number 10, best deck. Number 9. I think every card I've said has been banned so far. I'm pretty sure it's not going to get old anytime soon. I'm pretty sure most of these cards are banned, and for good reason too. Because, like, this card in particular as well, when it first got announced, people were looking at it like, what? Its summoning conditions are unrealistic and laughable. But with this card, I think, single-handedly put Instant Fusion on the map. Instant Fusion was a card that was being used now and again, but after this card's released, Instant Fusion became a staple. A generic extender card, even after this card got banned from organized play. This card was just mental. The fact that it could just summon any card from the graveyard, it extended into rank 4 utility, and it made Broad Ball even more mental. It meant that any deck could just splash Instant Fusion in their deck as a generic extender, and it could just make any rank 4 in the game. It was making Broad Ball, then whacking another Broad Ball on top, so it could just extend your plays. It was playing in Pure Zoo because it was effectively another Zoo monster, and even in decks like Mermail, like, you can just play it to summon back Dragoons, and you can make Dweller detached Dragoons and extend your combos through that way as well. It was just mental. It was really generic. You could splash it in any deck, and in the OCG, I'm pretty sure at one point, free Instant Fusion was a staple throughout the meta. We got it a little bit later, however, in the tins, but it was still something that saw play. I'm pretty sure at one point, free Instant Fusion was a staple and everything, even here, and not just the OCG. Thanks for watching, guys. Number 9 is Eldentity Norden. Cheers, bye-bye. Number 8. Now, this card, let me tell you something about this card. So when this card first came out, I think it was more so just like an Infernity thing. Like, people were just like doing some like wacky Infernity combos with it just to try and stack Infernity Archfiend or something like that. But as the game got faster and faster, it became so much more ridiculous. Like, from my favourite moments with the Valor Chain are when I played it in Necros, so you can just send Jin with it, and then you can just do lots of Jin locks with it as well. But what a lot of people were doing as well, they were stacking hand traps like Maxi and Effect Veiler and Artifact Lantier, then drawing them with Necros or Trishula as well. So the card just like searches anything. You can just stack something to the top of your deck and then being able to draw it with your engine. Like, you can even upstart into it as well, which is pretty mental as well. And to be able to send anything to the graveyard just opens up a whole line of ridiculous plays. And I think any card that sends anything to the graveyard is just absolutely mental. I think this card is better than Beatrice, arguably, because Beatrice, like, it's a bit harder to get 2 level 6s on the field, but at the time when, like, rank 4 toolbox was just, like, the thing to do in Yu-Gi-Oh!, the Valor Chain really, really shines for me. And if you watch, like, one of the more degenerate combos right before Lynx was even a thing, the Valor Chain was always the heart and center of all the generic combos. You can even Google that for yourself and have a little look. The Valor Chain is insane. Well, thanks. That's number 8. Cheers, guys. Bye-bye. Lucky number 7. Now, you might think that Tour Guide doesn't really deserve a place in the top 12. And it's arguably not as good as the cards that I've mentioned, like Chain, Northern, Astrograph, Broad Bowl. And it's not as good as a lot of cards that are out right now due to the power creep. But hear me out. So this is a top 12 of cards that had the most impact over the decade. Now, Tour Guide might not be the best card of the decade. However, its impact on the game is unquestionably amazing. When it first came out very early, 2010, maybe 2011 time, it was a card that was okay. Like, you remember that it was not very expensive. Its pretty much main function was to summon Sangan in plant format before XYZs came along, but it was still quite good. It could give you like a good, decent 1-for-1 summon. It can summon itself as well. It's what people were doing just to generate tempo. Then XYZs came onto the scene, and it became one of the most mental cards of its era, where it was splashed in everything. You could play it in wind-ups, where it just summons them 90 because it was generic. You can play it in Rescue Rabbit, because you can play Levianer and bring back Rabbit. It was a card that was splashed in everything, and it was a card that just was one of the best in its time, and that's why it's so high on the list. I thought it might have been potentially higher, but we'll get to the rest in a second. Like, this card is just so good, and it's still being played to this day. Come 2014, when Burning Abyss came out, it was back on the scene. It was played at 3, and it just summoned Dante, and it generated tempo because it can summon Skarm or Graf or Seer. And it's been on and off the ban list so much that you've got to appreciate a card that comes on and off the ban list, because it was a card that was so good it went from 2 to 1, and then it came back to 3 because they thought it was safe to do so, and then it's back to 1 again because the card's just so good. The card you even still see him playing now, like not from like a top point like super meta perspective because it's at 1, but you still get Burning Abyss decks that are doing like degenerate combos, which Tour Guide's still the heart and soul of, or at least being played as a generic extender. The card's just mental. And like, being able to do something simple as special summon at level 3, back in its time was just such an unheard of thing, being able to special summon from the deck. And being able to do something back then generated so much tempo. And even now that the game's gotten so much faster, it's still really, really strong. And is like a 1-card Link 2, 1-card Cherubini. It does a lot of stuff. It's really, really good. And that's why it deserves to be number 7. Number 7? I can't do it with 2 hands. Number 7 on my top 12 list. So that's Tour Guide of the Underworld. Still mental. Probably going to stick around for another decade, to be honest, because the card's so generic and good. And that's number 7. Cheers, guys. See you for number 6. Number 6. Now, I absolutely hate this card. I couldn't stand it back in the day. And I think a part of me still absolutely hates it and glad it's banned. But just because I hate it doesn't mean I don't recognize how much of a great card it was. Absolutely insane. In terms of what the impact that it had on the game, when Grass was at 3, you could not play a 60 card deck. Now for me, at the time, I could not bring myself to play a 60 card deck. I just always wanted to play a 40 card deck, and I think people playing 60 cards was mental. But looking back, I was so wrong. When this card's at 3, God, you absolutely have to play 3 Grass. This card's just so good. It took advantage of everybody who was just dumb like me and playing 40 cards. You just get the mill 20. 20, that's just oh my god, it's just mental. Being able to mill 20 cards was just so insane back then. And at the time where you played, like, I think it was like Zoo, Light Swan, and Paleo. Touching upon the Paleo deck, being able to generate so much advantage by just dumping a load of traps. So you can just bring back all the Paleo traps back. And the Light Swan deck, just milling Snow. Fairy Tale Snow is just so nuts. Being able to mill it and then just have so much resources to banish 7. And then the 7 cards that you banished as well generated your tempo as well. God, it was just so good. And then you also had Infernoid as well, where Infernoid had like an awful inconsistent problem. But then if you just drew Grass and just milled loads of Infernoids, that problem was just a thing of the past. And having the Zoo engine as well, just to generate your tempo and just give you more starter cards. And the decks were just good without Grass as well. If you played like a 60 card mirror match, it was fine because the decks were still good without even resolving Grass. But it just gave you that sort of unfair win button whenever you didn't play a 60 card mirror match. It just ignorantly just outright beat any deck that wasn't 60 cards. And I was just dumb enough not to realise that at the time, but at YCS Prague, everybody who played 60 cards more or less topped the event because they knew Grass is just a ridiculous card. Even at 1, when Grass went to 1, people were still playing it because you could play free left arm upper, and like Grass was just so dumb. Like, people were still drawing it. They always had it. They always drew it whenever you played 60 cards at at a regional or something like that. It was just such a pain. But you just can't ignore that, like, this card changing how people had to build their decks, had to like adapt to the 60 card meta, and the fact that they had to ban it eventually as well because like its presence in the game was just too strong. And it's a shame that it didn't break into the top 5 picks because it is top 5 worthy and it is mental, but the 5 cards that are above it, I would say, are better than it. You can disagree and you'll know in a second once you've seen them, but I think it's earned number 6. And if you disagree and you think it should be in the top 5, let me know in the comments below. Cheers, guys. That Grass looks greener. Blech. See you for number 5. Number 5. Speaking of cards I hate. Oh my god, how is this ever a card? We've entered the realms of top 5 now. And first of our picks in the top 5 is Vanity's Emptiness. Look at the state of it, man. This card at 3 was just... It came in and out. When it first made its appearance, it wasn't really a thing. It came out on Star Strike Blast, of course, so it was really hard to get as well. And it first made its appearance through in Dragon Ruler format in 2013, when Patrick Coleman just threw it in his deck, and it was just unbelievable, and people that weren't playing out to it, and it just broke the ruler mirror. It then started to see, it started phasing in and out of the format. Now and again, it became like a generic side free card, until eventually people clicked on, like, hang on, main decking this card's nuts! We saw it YCS London in Shadol format where everybody was just maining free of that card. It was just mental. And then it then came on to be like a staple of like in everybody's deck, side deck or whatever. It's just mental. Like not being able to special summon, and it was a card you can turn off whenever you wanted. There was generic stuff like Key Beetle Emptiness, where Key Beetle will just put you under an emptiness lock and just protect it. I think in Shadol format when America had Stardust Spark, that was another thing that was really generic as well. Sparks protect Vanity's Emptiness, and there's just nothing you can do because you just can't special summon. It was then played in Cliffort, where it was then in the triple skill drain and triple emptiness era, and god, that was just ridiculously hard. You just had to play removal in your Necros deck because you just couldn't beat skill drain and emptiness, otherwise it was just nuts. And again, like, Cliffort could just play under that because all the Pendulum monsters just went to the extra deck and not to the graveyard, so it was just nuts. You can just tribute someone and extend your plays. Then emptiness went to 1. But it was still a card that was just so annoying and it needed to go away. In Necros format, if you hard drew it, you can do 101 emptiness, so you can just lock the mirror out. Because they couldn't out emptiness because unless they sided back row removal, which people shouldn't really do in the Necros mirror match. People probably saw it as a meta call just to out mistake at some points in the format, but typically 101 emptiness was just game. And it was at 1 for a while. It was... Thankfully, we didn't... I can't remember if we did, but I don't think Emptiness and Nightmare Griffin were out at the same time, so I don't think you can set Vanity's Emptiness. But for some reason, Vanity's Emptiness is still at 1 in the OCG. And if it was at 1 now, or any variation on the ban list 2 or 3, I don't see why you wouldn't play it now, because the card is just so dumb. Your opponent can't special summon, and by the way, you can turn this floodgate off whenever you want. Oh my god. Yeah. Honestly, I thought this card was going to be higher, but people thought the other cards were better, and they probably are better. But yeah, this card is one of the best cards that have ever been made, and it's just nuts. As far as floodgates go, this is probably the best floodgate that has ever been printed in Yu-Gi-Oh! And I just don't know if there's ever going to be a better floodgate that they'll ever make, unless it's Vanity Emptiness 2, which is somehow like, oh, by the way, you can just put this in the graveyard whenever you want, or something like that. I hope Konami's not watching this because I don't want to give them any ideas. Cheers, guys. That's number 5, the first of our top 5. See you for number 4. Number 4. Yep, it's back! Making its way in number 4 is Sky Striker Mobilize Engage. Oh, man. It seems like we just can't get rid of this card, can we? Ray forever. Ray's Bay. This card is going to be with us for another 10 years. It might only have been with us for 2 years, but the 2 years that it's been with us, oh my god, the impact that it has. If you've watched my top 5 cards, of the year, you'll see that this card was card of the year, and there's a reason for it. The card's just so good. Its utility is absolutely insane. Again, this is just I'm just going to rehash what I just said in the top 5 video. Its utility is absolutely mental. It searches pretty much anything for any situation. It can remove monsters. It can remove back row. It can take monsters. It can negate monsters. It can banish from the grave. It can summon. And it's a starter card. And it also draws bonus cards when you set up with ridiculous cards like Into the Void and Card Demise. In regards to it being a splashable engine as well, one of the best splashable engines we've ever had. It's not a normal summon. It just activates Haunted Drones to special Kagari to add another engage back. It can get you so many pluses. It's just a generic extender. We've seen it in Orcus Sky Striker. We've seen it in Trickstar Sky Striker, and probably many more variants to come as long as Hornet Drone stays in the format. Engage. It's insane. It's so good. It's one of the best cards that have ever been printed in this current era of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I don't see it going away anytime soon. It's getting more support, so Sky Striker is going to be around for a very long time. And to be honest, is it really that bad? I mean, in terms of variation, maybe, but the card is just really, really fun. Who doesn't enjoy activating Engage and drawing a bonus card? Because I love it. I'm just gonna admit it right now. I love it. I love it. Raise Bay, and it's gonna be around for a while. Top 4, best card ever. See you for number 3. Number 3. Now, before I reveal number 3, we're entering the realms of top 3 now. These 3 cards are one of the most insane cards, not just of the decade, but have ever been made in Yu-Gi-Oh! These cards are just incredible, and it's quite subjective what order they should be in, first, second, or third. These cards are just mental, and take it with a pinch of salt in the order that they're in, first, second, or third. Like I say, it's completely like an opinion-based thing, and you can just decide for yourself which one you think is the better out of these 3. But for the sake of just the scoring we did and the top 12 list that we did, this is just the order that they've came out at. I personally agree with the order, but you let me know what you think as well. So without further ado, number 3, Soul Charge. Now this card burst onto the scene in 2014. I remember when it first came out. I literally had just got back into the game in 2014. I was just playing my little Fire Fist deck. Wolfbark went to 1, and then suddenly Soul Charge gets announced as a card. Monster Reborn still banned at this point, bear in mind. And then this card comes out and basically says, pay 5,000 life points, special summon 5 monsters, and you just win the game. Mental. It's a card that, like, pretty much transformed the format. It turned... the tempo of decks just got ridiculously high. When Soul Charge came out, all these Control Giga nonsense decks just became obsolete because Mermail and Infernity just became mental. At Worlds 2014, you saw decks that were played free Soul Charge do ridiculously well. Infernity winning Worlds as well. Soul Charge then eventually went to 1, but that was still not enough. Soul Charge was still just throwing in decks generically, like it played in the Shadol deck, it was played in the Burning Abyss deck. If the deck had a graveyard, you played Soul Charge because it could just summon loads of cards back. It kind of phased in and out now and again. People like threw it in now and again since it was the one of you would barely really see it. Sometimes it would crow up and you would lose because you just had it. You had Soul Charge, you would win, and it became that sort of card. You would be so far behind in a zoo mirror, suddenly, whoop, Soul Charge, summon all the zoos back. And then I think what was the final straw for me was when Danger FTK was a thing, where the deck basically just revolved around drawing it into your deck until you drew Soul Charge, and then just FTK your opponent. That's just mental, man. That card is just so good, and it's rightfully gone. And this, as well as the other 2 cards that I'm about to go through with the top 3, I hope never come back again because they're just so mental. Soul Charge, number 3, one of the best cards in all of Yu-Gi-Oh!, not just the decade. Well, cheers for that, guys. What do you think? Do you think this card should be higher? Maybe it should. It's mental. Thanks for watching, guys. See you for number 2. Number 2. Lexi! I bet you thought this was going to be number 1, to be fair. But no, sadly, it's number 2. It was ridiculously outvoted, actually. Number 1 won by a total landslide. So unfortunately, this is only number 2. This and Soul Charge was battling out for number 2 for sure. It was super close. Like, you have no idea how close it was. But no, Maxi has earned its spot as number 2 because It's the best hand trap that's ever been printed, and arguably probably going to remain the best hand trap ever been printed, ever. It's just so good. There was a time and a place for it where it was good for the game. There was like a moment when the format was slower. In ruler format, it was pretty cool. So it punished people that summoned the wrong rulers in the wrong order. So you couldn't just throw Max C on Blaster or Redox because they could just pass. And it punished those that went for Tempest, who went for Tempest and Tidal first, because you can just Crimson Blader over it. Before that, in plant format, it felt like more of a 1-for-1. It just stopped people from like going for like insane pushes, and it just put people on better kill me, otherwise I might draw Gauze, you know. It was pretty cool. And then it entered into sort of 2014. It wasn't really being seen play. It was more of like a side card for against Burning Abyss, if anything, because Burning Abyss just couldn't play through it to save their lives. And in 2015, it was pretty decent against Necros. But again, Necros could play around it because they could just kaleidoscope into Valk and Unicorn. So if it has elements where you can play around Maxi, I think Maxi was really cool and was pretty solid for the game. But then it became a point where it just became ridiculously obnoxious and it needed to go. And that was when Zoo happened. When Zoo came out, it was a control deck that just special summoned a lot. And that was awful because Maxi just hard countered it. You would normal summon a Zoo monster, they would chain Maxi to your rat effect, or they would just throw Maxi down and stop you from making any plays whatsoever. So you had to decide whether you wanted to summon Dryden to give them an extra card, or just pass and just hope your back row does the trick. But unfortunately, a lot of the time, you didn't have any back row, so you had to do it, so you give them more cards. So it was either a damned if you do, a damned if you don't situation, because you could run the risk of playing a defensive card, which then lets them draw into unbricking their hand, or you could just pass, and it didn't matter because they just had enough to just play through a board that was empty, or it could have potentially have just been enough to end on Dryden. So it just put you in really awful situations. The card's just mental. A hand trap that stuns your opponent and also replaces itself, as well as plussing off it as well in the process. It's nuts. Card's mental, man. It's so unfair. And you had instances as well where you would combo off, set up a board for them to put a reasonable board at that, where they had to, like, you know, do 1-for-1s to try and like get the best value out of beating your board and then setting up their own board. But as soon as that person that went first drops Max C, you're like, what can I do? Because if I try and push through that board, they're just gonna replace all those cards by drawing into new cards. It was just unreasonable. Card's unreasonable. Then they played around with it by putting it at 2. Then they put it at 1. But its very presence was just obnoxious, because there'd be times where you're playing a Spiral Mirror and you had to push, then you got Max C, then it's just like, well, I have to stop because then they're going to draw an obscene amount of cards, and no matter what board I put up, I'm going to lose anyway. And that's how obnoxiously unfair it was, and it's ridiculous. There's not a place for it in Yu-Gi-Oh anymore. The game's too fast. If Max C gets dropped in you, you just absolutely just lose. And it's at free in the OCG somehow. It's ridiculous. I just don't see how it is at free in the OCG, especially with all this daft Link monsters that they have over there. I suppose they somehow make it work. They have stuff like Call by the Grave, Ash, and Crossout Designator, but nah, even if you have that much stuff, I do not want this card to ever come back in the game. It's ridiculous. Do you guys think it should be number 1? Well, I guess you'll find out after I give you number 1. It's an hour to go until New Year, I think. Yep, it's an hour to go until New Year. So let the countdown begin. It's going to be New Year soon, and number 1 is just coming. See you then. See you in 2020.
I'm feeling so hollow. Don't you know? Don't you know? I'm living in shadow. Don't you know? Don't you know? I felt the fool's gold. I felt fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? You were fool's gold. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. And I did it all for love. Yes, I did it all for love. Oh, they say fools believe in it, so I guess I'm one of them. Oh, don't you know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's gold. What did I know? What did I know? I fell for fool's gold. I fell for fool's.
Happy New Year, everybody! Woo! Welcome to 2020. Are you as hyped as I am? I mean, it's a new decade. That means it opens up a whole brand new decade. New year, new me, and all that nonsense, yeah? But there's one reason why you've tuned in today, and that's to find out what the best card of the decade is, and I'm about to tell you now. So here it is. Here is number 1 best card of the decade. Surprise, surprise, no surprise to anybody, it's Firewall Dragon. This card is, without a shadow of a doubt, the best card that was printed in the past 10 years. It's insane. So when XYZ, Synchro, and Pendulum burst onto the scene, it took about a year for, like, those to really, like, get up and running, you know? And when XYZs first came out, you know, like, it was like genetic Utopia and stuff, and then eventually it just got really, really fast. Pendulum as well, you got like Clifford, it wasn't really doing any unfair Pendulum stuff, and then suddenly Pepe came out. Lynx, I thought more or less the same thing was going to happen with Lynx, so we're just going to get some generic ones like Decode Talker, and suddenly we're just going to get a really fast Link format. Absolutely not. Straight away, we got hit with Code of the Duelist. Here you go, Firewall Dragon. And it just went mental from there. Lynx literally took over the game straight away. It was like, if you weren't playing a mental Link deck like Spiral and Electromite, it just took over the game. And a lot of it was because of this card, Firewall Dragon. Like, what it was able to do is absolutely obnoxiously good. When Firewall was at 3, yes, remember, that was at 3 at one point. People were coming up with so much degenerate stuff. Being able to add back from the graveyard, that's just mental. You can just bounce anything, even from the graveyard as well. It, like, if you link something where it's pointing to, you just special it from your hand. And if you can even look it up, when Firewall was at 3, there was like some mental dinosaur FUK combos. And then in Spiral, it wasn't really degenerate. It was just like a defensive card where it just bounced 2. Then it can also bounce your resources back as well to help you, like, push on if you're out of resources, you know. It didn't really feel that mental. It just felt like a gimmicky, you know, FTK card. And then it eventually became a viable FTK. You could, in Pendulum FTK format, there was a way to FTK with Firewall Dragon. There was a way to end on an unbreakable board with Firewall Dragon. And then eventually, Danger FTK happened, where there was viable FTKs with Firewall Dragon. And that's when you were like, that's the final straw, you know. And it even had pseudo FTKs with Goki. You can end... the whole combo was just get the Firewall Dragon, link around it, keep on special summoning, U-Link, and then it became U-Link with Gumbler, Firewall was always the center of all these stupid combo decks. And I know there was points where you first had to, you know, start off the combo like with Helix or with Isolde or Electromite, then even with Summon Sorceress to get to that point. But the only reason why those combo decks had such a mental end board was because of Firewall Dragon. Like I say, U-Link, Gumball for 4, and also even FTK in your opponent with the Danger FTK. It wasn't even enough to like hold your impermanence for the Firewall, because you can Unicorn, put it back, summon it again, and then off you go again. This card is just so nuts. It does everything. It's a Link 4 that points up. I don't know how massively relevant that is, but it's easy to co-link it if that becomes relevant. For the U-Link, so it just pops right in the center. Co-link with Nightmare Goblin, so you couldn't even like target it with stuff as well. Oh god, it's just mental. Card's just so good. It does pretty much everything. It can be a defensive card if need be. It can bounce back all your resources. If you're out of cards to special summon from hand, you just bounce 3 more, summon them again, extend the combo. Nuts, man. This is one of the best cards that have ever been printed, and it's going to be really hard to top a card like this. That's all I can say. I don't think anything can top how mentally good this card really is. Maybe they'll bring out a new Master Rule that'll like make this card nuts, but to compare this to all the other cards in Yu-Gi-Oh, it's without a shadow of a doubt the best card of the decade, and maybe the best card that's ever been printed ever in Yu-Gi-Oh. Let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think this is worthy of number 1? Do you think something else should have been number 1? What do you think of the top 12 as a whole? And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, guys. And it's 2020. Have a happy new year. See you guys later.